Good evening, and welcome to the 2025 West River Modified Union Education District Annual Meeting. I'm glad you could attend. My name is David Lebo. It is my privilege to serve as your Education District Moderator and will act as moderator for this meeting. I would like to remind you this is an informational meeting to answer any questions related to the warned articles. We are not voting on any articles tonight. There can be no motions or amendments made. You cannot change the articles. This is purely an informational meeting, and please ask any clarifying questions on the warned articles. The election on these articles, as written, is tomorrow, Wednesday, March 26th. Yes, March 26th, at your respective polling places beginning at 9 a.m. in Townsend, Brookline, Newfane, and Jamaica, and 10 a.m. in Windham, with all polling places closing at 7 p.m. There's not many people here, but to keep things moving, I'll allow a person to speak once per article and not more than twice. When we discuss elections, I'll allow a candidate to introduce themselves, but any campaign speeches will be deemed out of order. At this time, I would like to introduce the West River Modified Union Education Board and Administration. We'll start down at this end.
Hi, Bob Tebow, Superintendent.
Heidi Russ, the Director of Finance.
Al Clausen, Board Chair.
Joe Winwick from the town of Townsend.
Dana West, Jamaica.
Crystal Goreview, Wyndham.
Kate Gearing, I'm an at-large member, but I'm from Newfane.
Leanne Jilson from Brookline.
Oh, sorry, Alenka Wilson from Townsend as the clerk.
And then I believe we have two board members. Three.
I think,
Online. Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay Bertram from Newfane.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Webb. I'm at large.
And who's number 3?
Drew.
Drew. Oh, Drew's in there. Hi, Drew.
Drew Hazelton, Jamaica.
Hi, Drew. Okay. I would like to thank the school board, administration, and teachers, all the employees, for all the hard work that they do for our children. I now call the West River Modified Union Education District 2025 Annual Informational Meeting to order. The legal voters of the West River Modified Union Education District, comprising the voters of the towns of Brookline, Jamaica, Newfane, Townsend, and Windham, are hereby warned and notified that all articles of business, 1 through 10, for the 2025 annual meeting will be voted by Australian ballot on Wednesday, March 26, 2025, at the respective polling places beginning at 9 a.m. Brookline, 9 a.m. Jamaica, 9 a.m. Newfane, 9 a.m. Townsend, and 10 a.m. Windham. Polls will close in all such towns at 7. If there's no objection, I will refrain from reading the entire warning.
Mr. Moderator, you have a hand up in Zoom land.
Zoom land. Yes. Mr. Bill. You can unmute yourself. No, Bill? No hand up? Okay. We'll make believe it's a wave. Oh,
I just lowered it.
okay.
If it goes up again, we know it's real.
Okay, so on to the articles. Article 1, to elect a moderator. I'm certainly available to run, but I didn't get my name in, I guess, in time to get it on the ballot. So we'll see what happens. Anybody else is more than willing to run for moderator? I'm not married to the job. I'm more than welcome to have somebody else do it if they choose to. Article 2, to elect a clerk. I believe Alenka is the clerk. Wilson is the clerk right now. Again, I don't think anybody put their name in on time to get on the ballot, so there will be write-in options. Article 3, to elect a treasurer. The treasurer is...
It is currently me,
Oh.
since Lori Garland stepped down.
Oh, Lori Garland stepped down, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is write-in option for the treasurer as well.
Are you willing to do it?
I am willing, I can be appointed, or it doesn't matter.
Okay, so Heidi Russ has thrown her hat in the ring. Okay, Article 4. Shall the voters of the district authorize the Board of School Directors to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year. Any discussion on Article 4? Yes, sir.
The hand is back up again.
Oh, Bill, hand up and not muted. Bill? Am I doing something wrong? No? Okay. Okay.
Bad one.
Bill, if you're having trouble and you figure it out, just speak up. Okay. Okay, nothing on Article 4.
Oh, did you want to explain that?
Oh,
If there's any questions about
Sure.
it, I can speak to.
yep, go
Article
ahead.
4 really just references the fact that the school district usually takes out a tax anticipation note because between summer and when the first quarter of taxes come in, they're usually getting very low on funds. So we usually take one out and use it when it's needed, and then we pay it back. So that's what that article's all about.
Thanks. Yeah, great. Any other? Bill's hand's up again. But
Still up.
oh, it's still up. Didn't go back down. Sorry. Anything on Article? Anything else on Article 4? Article 5. Shall the voters of the district approve compensation to the current officers for their services during fiscal year 2026 in the following amounts? Moderator $250, clerk $2,000, and treasurer $2,000. Discussion? Nope. Okay. Article 6. Shall the voters of the district approve compensation to the school directors for their service during the fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $1,000 directors and $1,200 for the chair of the school board? Any discussion? Article 6. Okay. Article 7. Shall the voters of the district set the date of 2026 annual meeting as the first Tuesday of April? Any questions on Article 7?
So we'll just make a note that this is a change because a lot of the information that comes in from the state is later, right? So we want to have as much information as possible. What's that?
Can you speak up?
I can, yeah, sorry. I'll do the best I can. So the more information we have, the better decisions we can possibly make with the budget. So having it be later in early April as opposed to late March, we're able to make more informed decisions. That's really the reason.
Okay. Article 8. Okay, lots of numbers to read. Shall the voters of the district approve the school board to expend $14,820,542, which is the amount that the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? The West River Educational District estimates that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $16,029.33, which is 2.21% lower than per pupil education spending for the current year. Discussion on Article 8.
So Bill's hand is up again. Third time's a charm, maybe?
Maybe? Bill?
Hands down.
Up?
It's up.
Yeah.
Bill?
It could be, if Bill can hear us, it could be that his audio is not connected correctly for a microphone. So maybe if he would disconnect and come back in, maybe that would correct it, or make an adjustment to his audio setting to have the right microphone pickup. A couple of suggestions.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I guess.
Any questions? No, there is a presentation for Article 8, and we can have questions as the presentation goes on. So,
All right.
Heidi? Oh, huh?
Not-
No questions?
Not for Frank.
All right. Al's gonna start.
I'll kick it off. All right. Good evening. On behalf of the West River Education District, I'm proud to present our FY26 budget overview, which is a reflection of our commitment to the core values that guide our work. Our budget is not merely a financial plan, it is a strategic investment in the educational and holistic growth of every student in our district. Yep, thank you. Our core values and strategic vision. At the heart of our mission is the belief in providing high-quality instruction for every student. We believe that every child deserves an education that challenges, inspires, and prepares them for a successful future. This commitment is reinforced by our core values. Excellence in instruction. We prioritize rigorous academic programs that build on a solid foundation of knowledge, ensuring that every student has access to world-class instruction. Comprehensive support services from counseling, nursing, and social work support to intervention programs. We're dedicated to nurturing both the academic and emotional well-being of our students. Holistic learning experiences. Our initiatives in outdoor education, art, music, world languages, and multicultural experiences are designed to foster creativity, critical thinking, and global awareness. Family and community engagement. We value strong partnerships with families and community members, ensuring that communication and involvement are at the forefront of our educational approach. Health and nutrition. Providing healthy, locally sourced meals is a priority, ensuring that every student has the nutritional support they need to thrive academically and physically. Safe and inclusive environments. Our focus on creating safe, positive school climates and inclusive cultures is critical to ensuring that every student feels valued and supported. And also, the last area we have winter activities, which is also one of our core values as we just wrap that up. Another successful winter activities program. Move on to that.
Yep, we do.
Oh, yes. So you'll see throughout the presentation, we have a lot of pictures sprinkled in from our most recent PBL intensives, which were all around the world. You had New York, you had Chicago, Boston, here at home, and in London. So great experience for our students in early March. Just another example of some of the great things that we do here at Leland and Gray and West River. Okay. All right. Oh, this might be a new one, you mean? Let me guess.
There's one by one. All
Yeah.
added these things on.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. Apologies. Just catching up here. So here are some examples of our core values in action. The West River Education District Board continues to support the local community with a successful summer food program budget. Last summer, the program served an estimated 28,000 meals to students under the age of 18. So that's remarkable. The West River Education District Board also continues to offer full-day pre-K for residents, free of charge for both 3 and 4-year-olds at both Jamaica and Townsend sites. And the board has made significant investments in the project-based learning intensives programs at Leland and Gray, again, as you'll see sprinkled throughout the presentation. And the West River Board continues to offer after-school programming and summer programming for families. And finally, the West River Board continues to prioritize mental health needs by supporting appropriate staffing in school counseling, nursing, and school social workers. That's a great picture.
It was another great picture.
That was,
Stop for a second.
this was, yeah, the urban Chinese American culture intensive. I believe they traveled to Boston and they came back and did some cooking based on their experiences. And then, so here's a one pager that has, if you haven't seen it, I'll be surprised. It's been passed out, it's been posted. We've done the best we possibly can to get this information out to everybody. But it's a simple one pager. It does have a QR code on it that you can go to get more information, kind of a deeper dive. But this is kind of the high level look at everything that we have done in terms of the budget. So just kind of represents a careful balance between our budget represents careful balance between fiscal responsibility and dedication to enriching every facet of our students' lives. With a modest 1.5% increase over the previous fiscal year, we have successfully implemented cost-saving measures that ensure our students and staff continue to benefit from high-quality programs without compromise. So some examples you see here are investments based on values. So I won't get into all of those, we'll get into those later on. Also talks about reductions that we made to the FY25 budget.
26.
Sorry, reductions from the FY25 budget. And increases year over year from the FY25 budget. Biggest one, which we'll talk more about as well, is healthcare. Healthcare was up 11.9%, but represented about a half of our increase year over year in the budget. And then there's information about food services adjustments, and then further on down you see what are the impacts by town to the tax rate year over year. And again, there's a QR code on here which shows much more information, but this is kind of our one-stop shop on what the budget is about. So we have a number of other slides coming up which are a deeper dive, and for that deeper dive I'm going to hand it over to Heidi, our expert in the business office.
And most of these documents are in the annual report. There are just a few of them that are not, but I tried to list on my slides what page in the annual report you'll find them on. So we're gonna start with some enrollment visuals. The first enrollment page on page 17 in your annual report shows the number of students in each of the schools by different color codes and by class. So you can see the numbers are higher in the high school than they are right now. The high school does include the Wyndham students and some other tuitioning in students. They represent a very small part of the pie chart, but you will see that the different colors represent different towns. And then the next enrollment shows the ADM based on the towns the students live in. They include students that are tuitioning, so Wyndham students tuition into the elementary schools right now. They are a part of the high school numbers though, because they are part of West River B, and that will come up again when we talk about some tax documents. We have another slide that shows the classroom makeover intensive that happened. Students got to go shopping and make over their classroom. They learned a little bit more about purchasing and how to put things together clearly, because in the picture they're putting things together from IKEA, I think. The next page, which is page 16 in your annual report, shows the summaries of the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union budget. There are multiple separate budgets that go into the overall, have assessments in different parts of our current budget. So the superintendent's budget has an assessment, which from the summary you can see the expenditure budget went down 4.27%. We are showing that the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union Board decided to use $100,000 of fund balance to help defray the cost even more. There's the MTSS budget, which that is the multi-tiered system of support. So that involves your special education as well as your academic support teachers that are in the schools that work with different tiers of student needs. This budget, the expenditure budget is up 5.23%. However, revenue is going down. A lot of that is federal funds that are title grants that have been being reduced year over year, and the census block grant as well. So the overall percentage that it's up for assessments between all the school districts is 14.17%. And then we have the ECSE budget, which is the early childhood special education budget. That is specifically for children ages 3 years to 5 years, 11 months. And we know of some significant needs coming in that age group, so there is an an increase in that by 24,000, which is a 22% increase. All these assessments are divided based on different methodology, which is listed in your annual report and separated out between the school districts as part of each of the school districts' budgets. Then we are coming to the summary narrative, which again, it's page 18 of the annual report. It lists some revenue changes, some increased monies coming in from tuitioning, a grant for English language learners. We have some changes to expenditures. You can read through them. There was some savings because Jamaica Village School is not running a full pre-K through 5th grade class. This current year's budget was built around having a fully functioning elementary school in Jamaica. However, due to not being able to find staffing, all that's running there is currently a pre-K program, and that's what's intended for the 26 budget. So there are reductions throughout the current fiscal year 26 budget, showing reductions in teaching staff, showing some building based reductions based on less usage. There is a reduction at Leland and Gray for the campus position. It's a 1.0 FTE. There's also a reduction of the Journey Away program that involves a 1.0 FTE position. One of the bonds for West River has been paid off, which is for the wood boiler, so there's just one more bond left, and we have a few more years left to pay on that. There was removal of the capital funds to go towards building projects. So that was $150,000 less in your budget. And the health insurance increases, again, 11.9% increase. I'd say on the third section on this sheet, you'll notice some of the state impacts for the budget that we had to take into consideration when building this budget. So the state of Vermont has put back into existence the excess spending threshold. This was something that was in the law prior to COVID, and then they waived it for a few years, and it's back. They posted the per pupil spending threshold at $15,926 this year. So we had to take that into consideration when building the budget. There is a long-term weighted ADM, which is how the state now counts students. I did in your books put in the definition of that so you can look into how it all feeds together. It's not a straight count. Students are given different weights based on whether they're an English language learner, based on whether they are from poverty, based on our geographical area and the rurality of our schools. All of that feeds into a number, which then we are given. So this year's number was 840.55 long-term weighted ADM. This is a decrease from 848 last year. So that impacts the number, our per pupil spending is gonna go up based on that going down. And the yield is a decrease this year, although it is calculated differently this year with the CLA in mind than it was for the current year. So that makes comparisons a little more difficult this year when looking at the numbers side by side. After the board met multiple times, there was a subcommittee that met multiple times. The expenditure budget that the board approved, that I brought to them, which is the amount of $14,820,542. Again, this is a $224,980 increase from the current year, but a 1.5% increase over fiscal year 25. You'll see on one of the additional slides that the per pupil cost ended up being $16,029 per student, which was a reduction of 2.21% from the current year. This does actually meet the threshold, and I'll explain that in one of the further slides. This next slide is just a visual for everybody to see how much health insurance is costing the taxpayers and how fast it has gone up from fiscal year 22. The average over this current year is a 10%, but if you look at since 22, it's more like a 50% increase based on being under $1 million and now being at almost 1.5 million for the school district. And then pages 19 in your book shows revenue, shows expenditure budget. This is rolled up to the functions. If you're in person, there are full copies of the budget, but we were condensing it so that everything is sort of all put together. For instance, if you are in direct instruction in the high school, you're lumped in with direct instruction at the elementary schools. So for purposes of seeing how much gets spent on direct instruction versus building operations, it's all there sort of abbreviated. You'll see at the bottom of the page that the school board chose to use $448,600 of fund balance to help defray the cost for taxpayers. This is coming from several different places, which I will point out when we get to the fund balances. So move on. This is the pie chart that I created so you could get a better visual of what we were just looking at with the budget. Direct instruction, you can see, is about 39% of the entire budget of 14 million. There's the separation of a few other things. You can see that the superintendent's budget, which is more administrative costs, are the 4.5% of the full budget. Otherwise, you could safely say that all the rest of this really impacts students directly, whether it be the food program, transporting students, the care and fuel for the buildings, and all the people that work with students, including the principal's office. So just gives you a visual of that. Oh, now we have a picture from our London intensives. I think you can see Parliament in the background there.
Big Ben.
And Big Ben. So page 20 in your annual report will show the fund balances. The column on the left will show the starting fund balance for 24 that was audited. And the column to the right, the further column to the right, saying ending fund balances of 630. This is the auditor's final numbers that have balanced out with our balance sheet. This just gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So a little more explanation. The general fund is showing 165,000 at the end of fiscal year 24 because the school board made a voted on a decision to spend out 165,000 of the surplus on safety and crisis improvements that they had deemed necessary. Greg Frost spoke to them about. There was also a little bit for the backstop that was being put in down on the baseball field. So that it has been spent out, and that will show that it's been spent out as we go through the fund, as the board watches their fund balances for the current year. When we spoke, or I spoke quickly about the 448,000 that's going to be used from fund balances, those numbers are coming from, the board has decided that 100,000 of the food service fund balance is going to be put towards the food program for this coming year, and I think it was 400. There's some funds that are in 95,000 is in the Wyndham Central Fund for after school, because that's where your after school budget is currently. So that's gonna go in to help with the overall reduction of the budget. And the rest are gonna come from the reserve fund. That surplus that's sitting at 1.4 million, you're looking at just under 300,000 coming from that fund. So those are going to be, those, if this budget were to pass, are obligated to help reduce taxpayers' costs for next year. Another London intensive picture and some sort of
The eye.
the eye. Okay. Page 21 in your annual report is where I wrote out the terms for the long-term weighted average daily membership. a long-term weighted ADM. So you can review the numbers that the state uses in figuring out each of the students that we report that live in our towns that we get tuition money back, state money for. And then the CLA, the common level of appraisal. I wanted to make sure everybody understood that, so you can read a little bit more of the definition that the state has put out as to how they look at the market value of your home based on the appraised values and the sale of property and the grand list. So take a look at that when you have time.
Is there any way to ask a question? I don't see where the hand works. This is Sarah Messenger.
And Sarah.
Hi. I don't know whether this is an appropriate question, but I just wondered if how these figures would change if the Department of Education continues to do what it's doing and erases all help.
That's a great question. I've been following along with what's going on. I've had some reassurances that the title grants aren't going away currently, but it is a concern. We're concerned about Medicare. We're concerned about the child nutrition program, and there are funds built into the current budget for reimbursement of those things. So it would impact the bottom line, and it could mean that we would, if the budget is approved and those funds go away during fiscal year 26, there may be some deficit spending we have to do. We do have the reserve fund, so that would help with some deficit spending, but that is a concern, a significant concern.
We've also been told, though, that the executive orders cannot stop the sending of that money that was allocated by Congress, only congressional action can. So with regards to title money and the IDAB money, specifically
Right.
special ed money, that has to be an act of Congress that would stop the flow of that. So it's unknown. It's day to day. We hear different something every day, but at this point, those are, I think, the Medicaid and the child nutrition programs are maybe a little bit more at jeopardy than the other two, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, I wondered about Title I since other schools are saying that's what's disappearing.
Yeah, Title I has been declining over time anyways. It's unrelated to the recent federal actions. But that's what we're hearing is that money can't stop or wouldn't stop just because the Department of Education, even if it was erased by an act of Congress, the titles were created 10 to 15 years before the Department of Ed was even created. So those two things are unrelated. They administer the funds, but the funds had come to the schools, to the states prior to the Department of Ed even being created in the late 70s.
Any further follow-up, Sarah?
No, I'm just worried.
Yeah, yes. You are not the
Because
only one.
the thing I'm worried about is like when you say that the money's already been allocated, with the other departments that they've done away with, like USAID, it didn't matter that that was already allocated. They won't release what they've already allocated, and it didn't have to go through Congress either. So I'm just worried that this could happen really fast.
Yes.
Anything is possible. Yeah. Yep.
There's nothing we know that can reassure us really, but I have been told at the business managers meetings that I've attended that for now, the title funds shouldn't be impacted at least for fiscal year 26. So that's kind of where we're moving forward on. And let's hope they
Thank
don't.
you.
Yeah. So the sheets, the sheets that I am showing right now are not, I was thinking this was in the annual report, but it's not. And it was the calculations with a comparison for how we figured out the taxes. And previous years, my predecessor had put a one-pager in showing the breakdown of the taxes, but with the threshold coming back and dividing West River A, again, elementary schools without Wyndham, and West River B with Wyndham for the high school, I had to allocate the two separately when it came to the tax calculations. West River A, West River Education District A, elementary, has less students than the high school portion. And so, as well as less funding coming in, the high school has more tuition funds that come in. So when we started making the decision or how to allocate the surplus, the reserve funds, it all ended up getting attributed to the elementary level, West River Education A, because that's where the funds were needed to reduce the spending down below the threshold. So that is how we worked on pulling this together. So you'll see towards the bottom, it gives you a separate tax rate. It shows the percentage of West River Education District A right at the bottom as 49.99%. That is what the state gives me as a calculation based on how many kids are in the elementary based on, and then how many are in the high school. So they do those calculations for me. We did get to exclude the current bond and principal and interest in the calculation, which is another way we got below the 15,926 threshold. So you'll see that in the green. And we'll go on to the second half, the second page, which shows the high school portion, West River Education District B, offsetting revenue, which includes tuition and a few other things, has already dropped with the exclusions for the bond, principal and interest, drops below that 15,926. So the calculation as you travel down on the left-hand side puts together the elementary level rate at 0.9409 and the high school rate at 0.9332 for the 1.8741 tax rate. That is before we move down to the adjusted CLAs. And so threw in Chicago. Here we go. Chicago picture with the kids under the beam. Yes, looking like they're having fun. So we move into what is on page 22 in your annual report, a closer look at those tax calculations and how they pan out for each town based on the statewide adjusted CLA. I've put in the comparison of the current tax rates, and you can see the variables, quite the range based on whether a town has been reassessed, whether the grand list has changed substantially in the town, and that makes for the huge swings everywhere from Wyndham's tax rate of going down only for their high school portion. This is not for their entire tax portion, but for their high school portion, it's going down by 17.8%. And Brookline is going down as well, almost 10%. You've got Jamaica just over 6%, which I have found out is the state average that they are expecting property taxes to go up when you take all of the budgets across Vermont into account. So Jamaica's right in the state average. Newfane is at 2.5%, and Townsend is just under 1%. So some decreases, some increases, not to the level that they were last year. And then, for fun, I thought I would just show a little bit of the current funding and how it looks across our towns, how our current budget is actually funded, who pays, how much they pay, and the income sensitivity and how that plays into it. So this is on page 23 in your annual report. So the top of it, the blue headings are individual to the homestead tax rate and the homestead grand list. So those that are currently residents in the town. I've put a different line in for each of the towns to show what your tax rates are versus the non-homestead tax rate, what you're raising as a homeowner, a resident versus a non-resident, and the income sensitivity that the town is getting to reduce those resident taxes. So I think the visual of the bar chart shows, and I use Jamaica because it's got such a substantial difference, so it stands out the most. The blue bar is showing the education liability for a resident in Jamaica. The red bar is the reduction based on income sensitivity credits that the town receives. So the green is the combination of the two. Takes what they owe based on the grand list values, reduces the income sensitivity, and the final amount coming from the residents in Jamaica is just under $1 million. However, the purple line shows the non-residents, and it's based on, of course, their grand list, but Jamaica's non-residents are putting almost $4 million into our school budget this current year. And so you can look at each of the towns in that way. Wyndham was hard to graph because of the split, and I couldn't, of the cash flow reports that I used from the state, I couldn't get a good grasp on the income sensitivity division. So theirs, again, is only based on high school, and they have a smaller portion. So just a reflection of who's currently paying our budget and how it's calculated by the grand list in each of the towns. We don't have that information for fiscal year 26 because we don't get that information until the fall after the budgets have passed. And then the 3-year prior comparison, page 24 and page 25 of your annual report. This is a legal requirement to be in your annual reports. It's a state worksheet that gets sent to all of us in which we put the numbers in, and the calculations are already based on all the state information they have. So again, this is one of the reasons why I have to separate out A and B based on the percentages the state gives me, based on our long-term weighted ADM. When I calculate the tuition for the high school versus the elementary schools, it all gets separated. So the expenditure budget gets separated based on the same percentages as the revenue. And you'll see in those 2 pages, the top yellow is where the amounts associated, I would say the right-hand column, the top yellow, the costs, expenditure budget associated with West River Education District A on page 24 and West River Education District B on page 25. And then on line 9, I put in the offsetting revenues based on the calculations. And so A includes that additional offsetting revenue from the revenue surplus, the reserve fund. Put in the amount of pupils, and I was able to add in the construction principal and interest from the bond. And then the rest just calculates it out. It matches with the tax document earlier that I showed you on the tax rate prior to being adjusted by each town CLA. So
It's a good time to pause. Bill has left, come back, his hand is up again, and now the mute button is on. So maybe it will work.
okay.
Bill, you got something to ask?
I have to unmute.
Did you unmute him?
I put his hand.
Oh.
No, I tried to unmute him, yeah.
Okay. Okay, Heidi, are you finished?
I am,
That's okay, I'm not trying to.
no, I am pretty much finished. It's gonna go back to Al. There was
Okay.
another picture, the boiling point intensive.
Sure.
Hard to tell what they're making right there.
Wonder.
And yes, I think you're gonna go over the key points, so I apologize if that felt like it was fast. Please feel free to ask any questions. It's hard to know how much
Impressive,
you want.
Any questions for Heidi right now? No? Okay, we can circle back. Al?
Okay. All right, so just some summary key points here. So we were able to manage to reduce the costs with minimal impact to programming. Overall, the increase was 1.5% over fiscal year 25. Of that increase, again, more than half of that was in the healthcare line, which accounted for $132,000 out of the $224,000 increase. For per pupil spending, again, we were down 2.21% at $16,029. And as Heidi mentioned, based on FY26 budgets, the average property tax increase in Vermont is 6%, so we're below that. And this just shows the range of tax increases that we had amongst our district, which anywhere down from 17.8% in Wyndham up to 6.32% in Jamaica. And of course, the drastic differences are mostly based on CLA within each of those. So then, just like to wrap it up by saying budget is definitely more than numbers. It's a strategic roadmap for sustaining and enhancing quality of education in our district. By investing in initiatives that align with our core values, we are ensuring that our students receive a comprehensive education that prepares them for future challenges and opportunities. Our careful management of resources, coupled with targeted investments in both academic and co-curricular programs, reinforces our commitment to excellence and community engagement. In closing, our FY26 budget is a direct reflection of who we are and what we stand for at West River Education District. We remain dedicated to creating a nurturing, innovative, and inclusive environment where every student can excel. We thank you for your continued support and partnership as we work together to uphold these values and drive our mission forward. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you. That was a very thorough presentation. Thank you, Heidi and Al. And I thank the board for the work that you've done. I know that it's hours and hours of service. It's late nights and weekends, and really appreciate that because it matters a lot to our kids in our community. A general kind of question on a
Frank, I'm
broad.
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Can you introduce yourself and your name and your town? Sorry, I should
Sure,
require
yeah.
everybody to do that. I apologize.
Yeah. Frank Rucker, business manager, formerly here, and I'm from Brookline.
Thank
Now
you.
I'm down in Brattleboro.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No
Thank you.
problem. Yeah. So it's on the enrollment page, on page 17. It is impressive that you folks have been able to bring this budget in within that penalty threshold. I know you tried last year and it didn't quite pan out. It's impressive that you've been able to do that. I preface my question in this context on page 17, when we have 240, 250 kids at the high school here, and that's serving 7 grades, it sounds like, 7 grade levels. 6 through 12.
6 through 12.
So that's like 30 to 40 kids average. So you know that. I'm just doing the math here right now. And the question is, how are we going to be able to continue to offer the math, science, literacy, the humanities, art, music, all of those fields of knowledge when we have grade levels, class sizes of around 30 or 40 kids. Or another way to say it is, if we have 4 instructors, right, a math, science, literacy, and social studies in front of 30 kids, I don't know how you're going to be able to maintain that $15,000, $16,000 per student, right? Because that math doesn't work, right? Those numbers are more like $35,000 per student. So it's not a new question. I had a similar question last year. You folks mentioned that you were working on a long-term plan, and just curious, where has that work led you in terms of configuring schools and trying to, continue to do what you've been doing, which is a comprehensive education within the threshold, within the penalty zone. So if you share thoughts on where you see that going, because your elementary enrollment doesn't look like it's going to change the high school demographic for 5 years. Any progress on the long-term planning and a vision?
Sure. It's yeah, okay, I can start with that. So yes, we've been doing long-term planning for a long time, and our most recent effort was to see if we could potentially close the Jamaica school. So took it to the town of Jamaica, asked Jamaica, and they most recently said no. So that was off the table. That now, would that have solved everything that you're talking about? No. Step in the right direction. Certainly would have been. Doesn't mean that we won't potentially go back to the folks at Jamaica and ask again. We may. But again, so that's just one piece of the puzzle. And then the other was, as you know, you attended the meetings. We had talked about moving to one elementary school. You know, that would have definitely been helpful. But again, Jamaica was kind of like step one of that process, and that we were not successful in that attempt. So yes, we need to kind of regroup and think about the path forward and see what other avenues we can take to get to that, to maybe to be more of a central campus, which would certainly, fewer buildings ultimately is going to lead to some savings, and yeah, with the smaller class sizes, it makes sense, but it's.
Yeah, and I would just add that from the high school programming standpoint, I think what the high school is leaning into now is a different way of thinking about education, and you saw some pictures of the intensives. And it's still in the early stages, obviously, but the idea of like these project-based learning models where it could be interdisciplinary learning happening, standards being met in different places, different ways, that might consider that sort of traditional classroom of social studies and science separately. That might not be the model that they end up with. So it might be some more creative thinking about how we offer high schooling. So that's in the works. They're as we saw the pictures, they're diving into that now. That's something that was first talked about at Leland and Gray my first year as principal at Quebec, and it's now finally getting to a place where they're really kind of doing some of that. So that could lead to some creative thinking about how class sizes are calculated and how learning happens.
Yeah.
So that's
that's
in the mix.
That's the kind of innovation that we're going to need in the West River Valley. I know, we're all in the same boat, and in terms of rural Vermont, and I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear those ideas are being considered, and I know you've got a great team at the central office. Glad to hear your curriculum implementation on the EL literacy. We know what an effective program that is. Great to see Jen working with the team, and then combine that with a different approach to the traditional format of high school is what we're going to have to do. So glad to hear that.
I was just gonna say, we'll have to wait and see what this Agency of Education does to us. In the end, we might have a plan and that might get swamped. Kaboshed.
Yeah, a lot there. Yeah, that's still to be determined. Yeah. We know that Vermont's committed to public education, though, so there's going to be public ed in our region available for our Jamaica, Brookline, Townsend, Newfane kids, Wyndham kids. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks. Frank, anything else? No? Yes.
Bill's hand is back up again.
Oh, Bill's hand.
Poor Bill. Drive here.
Bill is still muted. I don't think Bill is
Chad is not
going to
allowed.
speak. Heidi, that was an excellent presentation, may I say.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else on Article 8. Any other questions or statements from the internet? Anybody? No. Seeing no other questions for Article 8. Article 9. Shall the voters of the West River Modified Union Education District authorize moving the operational surplus, if any, from fiscal year 2025 to the Operational Reserve Fund? Explanation? Is there necessary?
I mean, there's usually a surplus, so, or we hope that there's a surplus. We expect there's going to be one this year since Jamaica didn't run the way as funded in the budget. So we just are looking for the voters to allow us to move that into the operational funds to be used for the future needs of whether it's buying the tax rate down or making a plan for the future.
Yes.
If I could, I think you explained it very well, Heidi, but on your page 24 and 25, I did want to make sure that where we have
Right.
our spending, like on the page 24, the line 13.
Yep.
Our spending is 16,098, but you're saying that is being we're not subject to the threshold because you have $173 exempt expenses.
Right, because of the bond,
Yeah.
principal and interest, yes, so that gets us below where we need to be. It doesn't, you still pay the per pupil cost, but there's no penalty
No
added
penalty,
to that based on the 15,926.
That's
Thank you
true.
for pointing that out so
Yeah.
I could explain it better.
Well, I was, if that was not the case, I would have recommended that you use your anticipated surplus that you just mentioned and buy that down,
Yep.
but you've already done that. That's
Yes.
great.
Charlie Brown's classroom. Okay. Any other questions? Article 9.
That's where we were.
Oh, yes, that's where we were. Any other questions on Article 9? No. Article 10. Shall the voters of the West River Modified Union Education District transfer $125,000 of Operational Reserve Fund to the Capital Reserve Fund? Questions? Reasoning? No? Okay.
I mean, we've taken out $150,000 that they usually put in to set aside for capital, for building expenses, sometimes unanticipated, sometimes planned, and I think, I can't speak for the board, but I believe their intention was to have some money set aside in the building reserve fund in case of necessary building improvements or repairs.
Yeah, when you're 15 months out on a budget, things happen. Yeah, so.
Okay.
That
Okay.
would, let me just say, that
Yes.
would further reduce the reserve fund.
Further.
Right, it's not in addition to raising taxes, it's a reduction of the reserve funds. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, that's the end of all the articles. Any other questions from anybody? Bill? No. Okay. Seeing no further questions and no further business to come before this informational meeting, again, I would like to thank our administrators, school board, teachers, employees for all that they do for our children in our schools. Don't forget tomorrow to vote, Wednesday, March 26th, at your respective polling places beginning at 9 a.m. in Townsend, Brookline, Newfane, Jamaica, and 10 a.m. in Wyndham, with all polling places closed at 7 p.m. If there's nothing else to come before the meeting, I declare the meeting adjourned. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Great job, David.